Welcome to Chapter 3 of our exploration of the Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023. In this chapter definitions, under the DPDP Act, we will know the key terms about personal data, sensitive personal data, and special categories of data, the roles and responsibilities of key players in the data protection ecosystem. The Digital Personal Data Protection Act, or DPDP Act 2023, defines several key terms essential for understanding how personal data is handled, processed, and protected. In this chapter, we will explore the core definitions of terms such as personal data, sensitive personal data, and special categories of data. We will also discuss the key players in the data protection ecosystem, including the data principal, data fiduciary, data processor, and consent manager. A proper understanding of these terms is critical for ensuring compliance with the DPDP Act. Personal data refers to any information that can identify an individual either directly or indirectly. The core principle behind the protection of personal data is that it is tied to the identity of a specific individual. Under the DPDP Act, personal data is the primary category of data that is protected, and its processing is strictly regulated. Section 2T of the DPDP Act defines personal data as personal data means any data about an individual who is identifiable by or in relation to such data. Examples of personal data: name, address, email address, phone number, IP address. Importance in the DPDP Act. Personal data must be processed with explicit consent from the data principal. It should only be collected for lawful purposes and adhere to the principle of data minimization, only collecting data that is necessary for the specific purpose. Data fiduciaries must implement safeguards to protect the personal data from misuse or unauthorized access. Sensitive personal data is a more sensitive category of personal data that requires higher levels of protection due to its potential to cause significant harm to an individual if mishandled. These types of data are usually more private and sensitive in nature, and mishandling or disclosure can lead to serious consequences. Section 2U of the DPDP Act defines sensitive personal data as sensitive personal data includes data such as A. Passwords, B. Financial information such as bank account or credit card details, C. Health data, D. Sexual orientation, E. Biometric data, F. Genetic data, G. Religious or political beliefs, H. Data about caste or tribe. Examples of sensitive personal data: health data, e.g. medical history, treatments, genetic data; financial information, e.g. credit card numbers, bank account details; biometric data, e.g. fingerprints, facial recognition; religious and political beliefs; sexual orientation. Importance in the DPDP Act. Explicit consent from the data principal is required before processing sensitive personal data. This data should be processed for specific and lawful purposes. Enhanced security measures must be implemented to ensure the protection of sensitive personal data during processing and storage. Special categories of data. The DPDP Act also includes provisions for special categories of data. These are considered highly sensitive and require additional safeguards due to their nature and potential to cause harm if misused. Special categories of data. Health data includes health conditions, medical records, genetic data, etc. Stricter controls apply to this data to prevent misuse. Biometric data includes data related to physical characteristics used for identification, such as fingerprints, iris scans, and facial recognition. Financial information includes data like bank account details, credit card information, and transactional data, all of which must be rigorously protected to prevent fraud or identity theft. Data principal. A data principal is the individual whose personal data is being processed. Essentially, a data principal is the data subject under the DPDP Act. The Act grants the data principal several rights, including the right to consent, the right to access their data, and the right to correct or erase their data. Section 2J of the DPDP Act defines a data principal as a data principal means an individual to whom the personal data relates and where such individual is. A child includes the parents or lawful guardian of such a child. 2. A person with disability includes her lawful guardian acting on her behalf. Rights of data principals. Right to access. Data principals can request information on the personal data being processed. Right to rectification and erasure. Data principals have the right to correct inaccurate data or erase data that is no longer needed. right to consent. Data processing can only occur with the explicit consent of the data principal. Example, if John provides his personal data to an online store for a purchase, he is the data principal. He can exercise his rights under the PDP Act, including the right to withdraw his consent and have his data deleted. Data fiduciary. A data fiduciary is any person or entity that determines the purposes and means of processing personal data. The data fiduciary essentially acts as the data controller in the data protection ecosystem and is responsible for ensuring compliance with the DPDP Act. Section 2I of the DPDP Act defines a data fiduciary as any person who alone or in conjunction with other persons determines the purpose and means of processing of personal data. Responsibilities of data fiduciaries. Obtaining consent. Data fiduciaries must obtain valid, informed consent from the data principal before processing their personal data. Ensuring transparency. They must inform the data principal about the purpose of processing and the rights the data principal has over their data. Ensuring security. Data fiduciaries are required to implement measures that protect the data from unauthorized access and breaches. Example, an e-commerce platform that collects customer data for processing payments and delivering goods is the data fiduciary because it determines what data is collected and how it is used. A data processor processes personal data on behalf of a data fiduciary. Unlike the data fiduciary, a data processor does not decide the purpose or means of processing. Instead, it follows the instructions of the data fiduciary. Section 2K of the DPDP Act defines a data processor as any person who processes personal data on behalf of a data fiduciary. Responsibilities of data processors. Acting on instructions, data processors can only process personal data as per the instructions of the data fiduciary. Data security. They must ensure that appropriate security measures are in place to prevent breaches. Example, a cloud storage provider that hosts customer data for an e-commerce platform is a data processor. It processes the data on behalf of the e-commerce platform, following its instructions regarding data storage and security. 3.7 Consent Manager. A consent manager is an entity that acts as a central point for individuals, data principals, to provide, manage, and withdraw their consent for the processing of their personal data. The role of the consent manager is crucial in ensuring that consent management is transparent, interoperable, and accessible. Section 2G of the DPDP Act defines a consent manager as a person registered with the board who acts as a single point of contact to enable a data principal to give, manage, review, and withdraw her consent through an accessible, transparent, and interoperable platform. Responsibilities of consent managers. Managing consent. Consent managers facilitate the process by which data principals can give, review, or withdraw consent. Ensuring accessibility and transparency. The consent manager must ensure that the platform for managing consent is user-friendly, transparent, and accessible to all data principals. Example, a third-party consent management platform used by an online marketplace allows users to give consent for their data to be processed, track how their data is being used, and withdraw consent if desired. This platform is considered a consent manager. Key takeaways. Personal data refers to any data that can identify an individual. Sensitive personal data requires higher protection due to its nature and potential for harm if mishandled. Special categories of data include health, biometric, and financial data that require additional safeguards. Data principal is the individual whose personal data is being processed. Data fiduciary is responsible for determining the purposes and means of processing personal data. Data processor processes personal data on behalf of the data fiduciary. Consent manager manages and facilitates consent processes for data principals. In the next chapter, we will dive into consent management under the DPDP Act, covering the detailed requirements for obtaining consent, managing consent, and the process of consent withdrawal. Thank you for joining this session. In the next module, we will explore the key provisions of the DPDP Act 2023, diving deeper into how this vital code operates. See you soon. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more valuable legal insights and updates. youtube.com/prolegalminds. If you have any legal questions or need assistance, visit us at prolegalminds.com to connect with our expert team. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of the law with confidence. Stay informed, stay empowered. See you in the next session.